Welcome to the COAA podcast, which is devoted to the idea that a team of people led by a good owner, sharing best practices in a culture built on trust and respect, will complete better projects. I'm Howie Ferguson. I'm the executive director of COAA, the Construction Owners Association of America. And today we'll be talking with a great friend and a past president of COAA, Kevin Lewis with Loudoun County Public Schools in Virginia. Before Kevin tells us his brief story of his professional journey, let me let my co-pilot introduce herself.
Hey, I'm Lucy Castro, and I am the Manager of Operations and Administration here for COA. And I serve as the technical person slash curly-headed novice. So with that, let's get into Kevin's story.
Yeah, Kevin. So you can go as deep and as far back as you want, but basically, what do you do now, and how did you get there? What's your kind of your professional journey?
Well, that is a long journey because I am an old guy, but I will say that, Howie and I have had a couple of talks over the years about that I have an interest probably in my retirement to work for the workforce development efforts in bringing our youth on and growing our industry and getting people interested in that. And that's part of my story is I went to high school and went to the vocational school to took drafting. And, as growing up, my parents and I never had a single conversation about going to college. It wasn't something we did. So my goal was to get a job as a draftsman and move through the ranks and, do that. I thought I had a great love for that. Of course, those were when you actually used these. They were funny little things. They were about 6 or 8 inches long. They had a piece of lead in the end of it, and you actually drew with the with a pencil and paper and those types of things. So as I moved through and graduated from high school, and I worked a few years in that role, and I went to work for a mechanical, electrical, plumbing engineer, and then an architect, and did a good number of projects. But then I had an opportunity to go and be what I didn't even realize was a thing at the time was an owner's rep. I went to work for a large manufacturing company as a draftsman, but then got pulled into the guy liked me for some reason, don't know why, but the guy that I still refer to as my mentor took me under his wing, and we went out to job sites, and then we were the owner's rep as a manufacturer. And essentially we were a construction manager at risk type of thing before that was a thing too, where we, as an owner, we had individual contracts with individual subs, and we took that and moved forward. As that worked its way through, I got back into drafting and design and architecture in MEP firms, started to do those types of things, and then went back to the owner's role again. And so just back and forth. And, my aunt said one time I change jobs more often than she changes her underwear. But, I really appreciate that opportunity to see different sides of the fence and to see where someone that could come out of high school could do different types of things. So, moving through a couple of different things, but I landed at Loudoun County Public Schools as a project manager. And I was in the field. Some people call them field reps, some people call them project managers, and we were out there inspecting and watching the quality of the work as the owner's rep. And I have to give credit to my wife. She said, you need to go back to school, or go to school. So I ended up going, starting at the vocational school. Then I went to the community college, got my associate's degree, and then transferred and got my bachelor's degree, and then ultimately was able to be prepared for and pass the PE exam. And that allowed me to move through the ranks. And I bore you with all that because I think it's an important path for people to see that you don't have to come right out of college and go into a management position, and that I believe that I've benefited greatly from being in all those different roles and understanding, the perspective of the folks out there in the field. And so I moved from the project manager, became the design person who reviewed all the designs from the architect, and then within a couple of years became director of construction. And then a few years after that became the chief operations officer that I hold that role now. And a little bit, sometimes I wonder why I did that last step, because I've moved me away from construction. And so now I have facilities, maintenance, planning, transportation. So a lot of other hats that I need to wear that keep me from what I love to do, and that's part of construction. So I'm a few years away from retirement, And I do want to go back and try to see if some of that experience can help young people find their way into our industry.
Yeah, and Kevin, it'd been a while since I heard that story, so I loved hearing it again, with the possible exception of your aunt's underwear. That's kind of burned into my head a little bit, but otherwise, I love that story, and it's so relevant, and I know Lucy does too. She was over there cheering for you. The non-traditional. I don't even like that term, because who decided that this is tradition? Anyway,
Right.
it's a great example for people. There's a lot of ways to skin the cat, as they say. You don't have to just do that. Anyway, great story. Um, Thinking about, and Kevin, you can go whether this is, because again, you have much more than design and construction under your hat or your role now. So whether you want to focus on that or go organization wide, or you can go back further in your career, talk a little bit about, because this is a big part of COA and the COA way. Talk a little bit about your thoughts on culture. And it's maybe getting to the point of being a little overused these days, but I know you and I share this, Lucy too, the belief that that does matter, whether it's on a project team, within a department, within a whole organization. It has to do with how people treat each other, how they act when the times get tough, all that kind of stuff. Talk a little bit about that and what you do to maybe have a healthy culture at your organization.
So that's an excellent question. And as you were reading your intro to this and you talked about relationships and different things, and I was reminded that, this conversation is not going to have anything to do with how much any of us know about construction or design or those types of things. It's going to be about relationships. Our jobs are to create and maintain relationships, because that's where the rubber hits the road. That's where you get things happening, you get things done, and you're able to move things forward, because the culture is incredibly important. And I often tout the big influence that COA has had on my life. And I don't know if you did this, Howie, or somebody did this, but at one of the conferences years ago, there was a video that was produced by the Cleveland Clinic that it showed people walking through a hospital and running into people that had different experiences. So the one that you walk onto an elevator and you see a picture of a guy that's sitting there smiling, and the caption over his head says, "Just found out he's a father to a new baby boy." And then it pans over 18 inches from a person standing beside that person, "Just found out she has cancer." And so you don't know what someone is going through when you're sitting at the table talking to an owner. And so I tell my team all the time, never allow the first time you meet a person from the contractor side or the design side that's not on your owner's team, don't meet them for the first time when you have a problem. So we got the greatest tool built into all of our specs. We have all these pre-installation conferences that sometimes never get done, sometimes always get done. But I say, take advantage of that. Sit down across the table from these people that are going to be putting work into your building, and make sure you create a relationship. And then you start that relationship. So now when something does go wrong, and we all know it happens, you sit down at the table to work out it with someone you know and someone you have a relationship with, and hopefully someone you've already started building trust with. Because if you go to the table and you don't know someone, you don't know if you can trust them or not. So what happens? Everybody goes to the table as far apart as you can, throw as much stuff against the wall, see what sticks, and then you try to meet in the middle. But if you go to that table as colleagues and professionals, then you're able to manage a situation with trust and get to a better solution. And what's better than a better solution that's quicker? And so you could do that without having all the I can't even remember the term because it's been so long since the position. You come to the table with all these things to try and just state your position. Instead, you can work it out. I've watched that happen right here in my department. Just recently, we have kind of a turnover in our project management team. And, I saw a couple of times where it was like, I'm going to get them, I'm going to get them, I'm going to get them. And we sit down and I showed them that video from the Cleveland Clinic about how you need to have empathy about what other people are going through. And I've had a complete turnaround. I had a major contractor nationally known contractor call me and say, I have never been through that before. It was an absolutely fantastic opportunity where your project manager took every one of my team members and said, you did a good job, and gave an example of what they did as a good job. And so, proud papa moment. I'm telling you, that was a feeling that I appreciated, and saw that our work in trying to be a better partner and a better owner is working. And it was validated by the contractor's call. And vice president of the company called me and say, we've never seen that before with an owner. It was
That's
cool.
beautiful. Yeah, proud papa indeed. Kevin, go it's somewhere in the middle of what you were relaying, what you were sharing there. A couple of times you used the word relationship. And it's interesting, as a former public owner myself at the federal level and then at the state level with UF, and you and I share that, right? And a lot of COA members are quote unquote public, whether they're, there's different versions of that, but they owe to the taxpayers, or they're sunshine law, Florida, where everything is out in the open, whatever. They're public owners. I found, and I'm interested to know if you found this too, and if you found it in your department and had to fight against it a little bit, that some of my colleagues in those positions were allergic to the word relationship, because they were thinking, they were translating relationship into gifts, and this guy's going to fly me to Vegas or buy me a boat. And they're like, no, of course that stuff is bad, might get you fired, thrown in jail. Relationship is not necessarily that. Talk about that. Have you found that you have some people who go, oh, I can't have a relationship, and what do you do to kind of explain, no, that's not what we're talking about?
Yeah, absolutely. It happened all the time. And somewhere along the line, I had a conversation with one of my team members about, at one point we were building a school, and, I was the owner's rep, and the contractor was there. The contractor was going, it was a very good contractor. Of course, I'm sure this has never happened in history, or we didn't give them time to build the school, 18 months to build a 300,000 square foot building, but they were able to do that. We hired the principal of the school halfway through, and she showed me some leadership and some relationship building skills. She dragged in one day her barbecue grill and started making hot dogs and hamburgers for everybody on the job site. And I'm sitting there and saying, that was a brilliant move by her. And I wish it was my idea, but it wasn't, it was hers. And so we've done those types of things. And sometimes all you need to do is show a little bit of appreciation and be able to meet them where they are and know that there are things going on. Nothing worse than being the owner of a project and realize you've missed your budget and now you need help getting there. And so you need a partner to do that. And so, those types of things that I do, we're really strict here about gifts and whatnot. And we let our contractors know that right up front, and they respect that. And that was thing. I'm old enough to remember when, before I was a public owner. This is in the private industry. You go to your car one afternoon, and there's a Christmas turkey sitting in your back seat. You don't, who brought that here? That stuff doesn't happen anymore. Well, I don't think it doesn't happen in our world, but
I hope not. I mean, I'm hearing salmonella. That sounds really kind of scary. A turkey in the backseat of your truck or a car, especially as a Southerner, right? Like,
well, yeah, I was gonna say we're in Virginia, so at Christmas time it's usually cold enough to keep a frozen turkey for a while. Yeah, but it's just an example of those things really aren't appropriate, and then they become expected. And then when they're expected, then it's just not. That's not a good, healthy relationship.
Right.
And so we do strive to do that. And back to the story about this contractor calling me and talking about having not done that experience. And his thank you was to me. And I said, it wasn't my idea. That all happened at the project level, and they did that. And it was so much appreciated. And I think it meant more to them realize when it wasn't something that the boss told them to do, it was something they came up with on their own. So
Yeah,
that's how you build relationships.
that's right. Because again, like we both have said, everything's fine and good, maybe whether it's beginning, middle, or end, when times are fine and you're not over budget and you are on schedule and everything's hunky dory. But when the stuff hits the fan, and it always does in one way or another, whether it's some drama or mistake or overrun or whatever, that's when that relationship and that culture is going to show itself, good or bad, as you know. Kevin, thinking most of the folks we talk to in this podcast, we're not talking too much about COA. We're talking about their journey and their thoughts on things. But I think with you, it's especially important. You not only were a president of COA, so you're part of the the history of getting COA to this 30th. Can you believe COA's been around 30 years?
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about what motivated you to or guilted you, or whatever the prompt was, to make you go, hey, I'm going to step into this big time leadership role. And if you're comfortable, talk a little bit about the pretty significant change that you helped kind of lead that was uncomfortable, moving to an in-house staff, which is why Lucy and I are now here working for COA.
Wow, so that's a long story, isn't it? And you
A
know,
little bit.
it was quite a process to watch that. And so I got involved with COA at the Virginia level, and one of my former bosses worked with one of the leaders at UVA to create the Virginia chapter. And as you probably remember the history, it lasted for a couple of years, then fell back. But the first time we had, the boss came, and there were 15 or 20 of us in the whole department. He came and said, hey, I got some people coming to a meeting. Show up over here at this school. We're going to do that. Didn't know anything about it. And it turned out to be a presentation from COA member Holder. We might know some of those people in that. Gave us a presentation to 6 people in the room, but spent 2 hours giving a presentation on construction management at risk, just like we were 200 people in the room. And they were committed to that, and they gave that presentation. And I realized that there was a lot more to this business that I didn't know and needed to get involved with. And that started my journey in COA to try to do that. And I'll also say that I was a part of a couple of other organizations, and I felt like I was the only appetizer on the menu when you went there. And I'm trying to find a better way to say that, all the people just flocked to you, wanted to buy you dinner, wanted to buy you beer, wanted to take you out to this, wanted to do that in the association. And there was a couple of times, and it may even been you, Howie, where folks were uninvited to be COA attendees because they were there to specifically sell their product, and not there to better the industry. So as we watched that, and when I came on to the board nationally after the Virginia chapter, we were competing on how to grow the organization and how we're going to do that. And it was a difficult call, because I remember I was assigned to be the membership person. I'm sitting there looking at 300 or 400 people, and how do you sustain that as I'm watching all the folks get old like me now? Is that a sustainable model? And we got to get more people. We've got to get more people. And I quickly learned that we were small for a reason, and we were very influential, but we needed to reach out and be more influential to more people. And so while I was trying to find a way to find ways to grow the membership, we were also trying to develop OTI. And Terry Cook, my hero, she goes through that process and convinced the board and to do that and put us on the map from a training perspective. And so that was the beginnings of how do we get to be bigger, more influential, not just influential to our specific owners, but influential to, in my view, to the industry. And I think done a great deal of things there. And, Ted Argyle and all the work that he's done with the contracts stuff and all that, it just allowed us to have a footprint into other areas and have that respect from the industry. So I'm thrilled that it's 30 years in making. I'm thrilled that Lucy's still here, and that Howie, you're in the spot you're in because you were the perfect person for that position. And so I think that will continue to grow. My biggest regret probably is my new role keeps me from being as involved as I want to be in the group. So, but I do have some folks here that are jumping in and recognizing the value.
Well,
and
we miss
Yeah.
you too. We miss you too. So I
It's
think
okay.
the feeling
This
is
is-
mutual.
This is what happens when you're successful, man. You're all Hollywood now. You get time for COA. We get it.
Yeah.
No, you have time for COA. Here you are. You have time.
That's right.
That's right. He's made 30 minutes for us before
Hey,
before
I'll take
going
it.
to ask for money. That's right. That's right.
I'll take what we can get.
Hey, Kevin, switching to something else that, again, you can go, it doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be for right now over the whole organization. It could just be back to your design and construction days, wherever you want to go with it. But it's kind of related to workforce, but more on the kind of the white collar, if you will. So your workforce, your folks, the folks that work for Loudoun County Public Schools, whether they're driving buses or managing projects or whatever, recruiting and retaining talent is an issue, always has been, but it may be exacerbated today. COVID did some weird things, made some people not want to work anymore. Anyway, finding good people and keeping them is hard. What are your thoughts on that, and what is LCPS doing to try to make sure? You just talked about some turnover recently, and talk about getting and retaining good talent.
So that is a difficult thing, and it's harder in some areas than others. Bus drivers, you mentioned that there's a nationwide driver shortage, and that affects the construction industry as much as it does the student transportation stuff. And so our school board is a key role in that. So as staff, we go and say, we're having trouble recruiting and retaining these staff members. We need to up their benefits. And from a government position, as the organization we are, that's maybe a little bit easier in some ways to be able to find good benefits packages to bring folks in. We have learned a long time ago. I remember years ago, one of my bosses saying, Jimmy left for a quarter, another 25 cents on the hour. But, we've learned over time, it's not just the dollars. The employees may come and say, we want to be paid more, but what they really want to be is appreciated and have those benefits and have that long lasting security that you're not going to lose your job. And, before I came to work here, I lost my job in the private industry 3 times during my career. Once, literally 2 weeks after I got married. And so, those things hurt. And so it's hard to describe to someone who is a project manager for a big construction company making X dollars a year, come to work for, the owner, in some cases, who may be seen as the enemy, which we're fixing that, but, still come for less money. And then the idea is, we have a retirement program and benefits, and, we have flexible schedule. We have a whole week off at Christmas maybe, or Thanksgiving. And, in the construction world, you have Thanksgiving Day off and Christmas Day. Otherwise, you're going to be there, right? But we're also seeing contractors now recognizing that, and the better contractor you deal with are treating their employees better. And that's what it is. Everyone just needs to be treated like a professional, because they are. And skilled people are now being seen more as a professional, like they are. And so that didn't used to be the case. They were expendable in my early career. There's a line of people a mile long that wants to do your job. So either do it or give me your keys and your beeper. That's how old I am, and hit the street. So,
That's right. Yeah.
Treating people with respect. That's a huge thing.
Yeah, Kevin, 100%. And as you're talking, I'm thinking about a conversation recently with a leadership person at GSA, General Services Administration. Now you know who they are. What you may not know is in the last few years, they're not only a member, all 10 regions and headquarters, they're a very big consumer of the OTI, the Owner Training Institute classes. They've gotten very involved. Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah, and one of their higher ups, a lady named Julia DeRossi, is now our new chapter president in Illinois. So they've gotten very comfortable with COAA, and they're liking what they're seeing. My point in bringing GSA up is they're obviously a big giant battleship kind of a thing, but they're similar in that they can't always compete with private industry on wages. What they can compete with, similar to what you're saying, and Julia was just telling me this, that what they offer folks now is, with a few exceptions, you can work for them almost anywhere. You can be in Region 4, which is based in Atlanta, and live in Denver. I mean, and so this whole remote thing and how the workforce is that's a big deal for someone that says, well, I don't want to move to DC. Well, that's okay. You can still work for us, DC, not live here, and we'll pay your expenses, come twice a year. That kind of thing, all of a sudden now they can compete in terms of satisfaction of job and fluidity and the ability to work remotely. All that kind of stuff matters more than ever. So
yeah, it does, and we've done some of that. It is challenging in some ways, and so it's more successful in some positions than it is in others. We have a few positions that I see a couple of these people once a month, and then others, we have to be standing around the table, looking at plans and having those conversations. So we do have a combination of those, and we try to look at that. The school system itself has a couple of just full-time remote workers, and our role is a little bit different in that, and So we try to do that whenever we can, but that is a difficult thing to try to manage that, because it is an expectation for folks, especially young people coming up. How can I not be in that traffic? And, those of you not familiar with Loudoun County, we are 2 counties west of Washington, D.C. So, I'm about, 30 minutes from the Beltway. And so the traffic is really rough here. And we were also the data center capital of the world in Loudoun County. So building lots and lots of data centers, so much so we've run out of power. And so they're trying to figure that out. Yeah, it's a big problem. The whole region is struggling for power because of that. So, we have all that traffic and all that congestion. So remote work is really enticing here. And we're touching on it and trying to figure our way, but it's something that we know is going to be expected more as the workforce becomes younger and younger. As from my point of reference, it becomes younger and younger.
Oh yeah, well yeah, that's how it is, right? But no, it's a balance, Kevin. Obviously, there's some your bus drivers. They're probably going to not be able to work remotely.
Right.
Right. That one's going to be hard. But yeah, it's tough. Hey, we're about out of time, Kevin. So any other thoughts you want to share, just whether it's looking forward to your next chapter or thinking back about this incredible journey, and whether you're too humble to say it, Kevin, but you've had a big impact on COAA, on Loudoun County Public Schools, and probably most of the people you've encountered just because of the kind of classy gentleman you are. Any thoughts about life or work or anything else?
I'm not quite sure why it popped into my head, but one of the hardest things that I've had to deal with as I have assumed different roles is it is important to people to be able to meet with or talk to the boss. And I never put much stock into that, but I have a hard time recognizing that people want to, you're in a group full of people that work for you. There's 2,000 employees in my department, and it's important that people have an opportunity to at least say hi and do that. And, as your leadership in an organization, that's important as well. And one of the things I've started is what I call these chief chats, where I'm going and trying to get to all 2,000 of my employees and just sit down. Tomorrow morning, I'm meeting with a group of bus drivers. And so it's one of those things that you got to take the time to do, and you got to be able to say, you're important to us. And you can't say that in a room full of 2,000 people and say, you're all important to me. Thank you for being here. I appreciate you, because they may or may not believe you. But if you take time and sit down with a small group of people, it will matter. And so that's one of my goals before I get out of here, is to be better at that and be more present with the folks that do the work, because I don't do the work. They do all the work.
This is the least surprising thing I've heard in a decade, is that Kevin Lewis is making time to appreciate the people that work for him. What a shocker.
I love it.
All right,
it's important.
Love it. No, not a shocker at all, but wow. Good on you, Kevin.
Good stuff. I think I'm going to have that as a goal too, because we have a big staff here at COAA, as you know, Kevin. There's all 4 of us. So I'm going to see if I can make time to meet with all 3 of them. We can't get away
from him. Everywhere you look, there he is.
That's right.
It's like
a plague or a virus.
Like is it American Express or Visa? Everywhere you want to be.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Hey, Kevin, good luck with your budget presentation. Not that you need it. You probably know what you're doing. And thank you, my friend, for taking time to talk to us.
Absolutely. Thank you both. I appreciate you thinking of me, and I'm looking forward to seeing you in a couple of months.